Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are about to take you on a journey so unbelievable, so absolutely mind-blowing, that by the time this video is over, you will never look at loose change the same way again. Imagine, just for a second, reaching into an old jar, a forgotten drawer, maybe a dusty box in your grandparents' attic, and pulling out a small, ordinary-looking coin. A coin that most people would drop into a vending machine without a second thought. Now imagine being told that this tiny piece of metal, this humble little nickel, is worth not hundreds, not thousands, but $79 million. Yes, you heard that right. $79 million. That is the staggering, jaw-dropping, almost incomprehensible value attached to one of the most legendary and elusive coins in all of American numismatic history, the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel. And before we dive deep into everything that makes this coin so extraordinary, I need you to do one thing right now. Stay with us until the very end of this video, because we are not stopping at just one coin today. We have two more coins coming up after this one. Coins so rare, so shockingly valuable, that collectors around the world have spent decades, entire lifetimes, chasing them. I will not reveal their values just yet, but I promise you, by the time we get there, your mind will be completely blown. So lock in, do not touch that back button, because what is coming next is going to leave you absolutely speechless. But first, let us talk about the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel, a coin so wrapped in mystery, rarity, and historical significance that it has become the stuff of legends in the collecting world. To truly understand why this coin commands such an astronomical price, you have to go back, way back, to the roots of the Jefferson Nickel itself. The Jefferson Nickel was first introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel, which had been in circulation since 1913. The new design, created by Felix Schlag, featured a portrait of the third President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, on the obverse, and his magnificent Virginia estate, Monticello, on the reverse. It was a coin born from a democratic ideal, a piece of everyday currency meant to honor one of the greatest minds in American history. For decades, the Jefferson Nickel was produced in massive quantities, millions and millions of coins struck at mints across the country, and most of them, the vast majority of them, are worth exactly 5 cents. But then, something happened, something rare, something that transformed an ordinary, everyday coin into an object of obsession for collectors worldwide. You see, in 1998, the Philadelphia Mint, designated by the small p mint mark on the coin, produced a run of Jefferson Nickels that were unlike anything that had come before. The year 1998 itself was a fascinating moment in American history, a time of economic prosperity, technological revolution, and cultural transformation. And the coins minted that year carry the energy of that era within their very metal. But what truly sets the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel apart is not just the year or the mint. It is the confluence of extraordinary factors, a perfect storm of rarity, error, and collector demand that has elevated this coin to near-mythical status. Let us talk about the errors, because this is where the story gets truly extraordinary. The most prized versions of the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel are those that carry specific striking errors and die varieties that make each example utterly unique. Among the most sought after are coins with a double die obverse, where the die used to strike the coin had developed a doubling effect, causing the letters, the date, and even Jefferson's portrait to appear slightly doubled, creating a ghostly, almost haunting visual effect that is immediately recognizable to trained eyes. Then there are the full steps coins, a designation that refers to the clarity and sharpness of the steps on Monticello on the reverse of the coin. You see, getting a full steps designation on a Jefferson Nickel is extraordinarily difficult because the steps are one of the first areas to show wear or striking weakness. A 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel with full steps and a pristine strike is like finding a needle in a billion haystacks. And when you combine full steps with a double die error and top-tier condition grading of MS68 or higher from a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC, what you have is something so monumentally rare that the entire collecting world stands at attention. The auction history surrounding the most elite examples of this coin reads like a thriller novel. There have been whispered accounts, passed through collector circles and numismatic forums, of examples changing hands in private sales for figures that defy ordinary comprehension. The journey of one particular example, reportedly discovered in a small estate sale in the American Midwest, supposedly by a retiree who had no idea what he was holding, became the talk of the numismatic community for years. The coin, encased in an old cardboard holder and tucked inside a shoebox filled with miscellaneous change, was initially offered to a local coin shop for just a few dollars. The shop owner, not fully recognizing what he was looking at, passed on it. The retiree then took it to a coin show, where a sharp-eyed dealer immediately recognized the telltale signs of the double die and the extraordinary surface preservation. What followed was a bidding war so intense that it reportedly lasted for months, with collectors from across the country and even internationally entering the fray. The final sale price? Let us just say it entered the territory of legends. And that is just one story. There are others, equally dramatic, equally unbelievable, each one a reminder that the rarest coins in the world are still out there, still waiting to be found. What makes the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel even more intriguing is the psychological hold it has over collectors. There is something deeply human about the obsession with this coin. It represents not just monetary value, but the thrill of the hunt, the romance of discovery, the idea that the extraordinary can be hiding in the most ordinary of places. How many people have handled a 1998 nickel and tossed it aside without a second thought? How many have spent one at a gas station, dropped one into a tip jar, lost one between couch cushions, never knowing that under the right circumstances, with the right errors and the right preservation, that tiny piece of metal could have changed their lives forever? This is the power of rare coins. This is why millions of people around the world dedicate their lives to collecting them, studying them, hunting for them. The condition of a coin, its grade, is everything in the world of numismatics, and the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel is no exception. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a coin in absolutely perfect, flawless, mint state condition. The difference between a coin graded MS-65 and one graded MS-68 can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. At the top of the scale, in those rarefied grades of MS-67, MS-68, and the near impossible MS-70, the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel transforms from a collectible into a treasure. The luster, the strike quality, the surface preservation, every tiny detail matters. Every microscopic mark can be the difference between a good coin and a life-changing coin. Certified examples in the highest grades have generated some of the most intense bidding wars in modern coin auction history, with collectors willing to pay almost any price to add one to their collection. And here is what I really want you to think about right now. This coin is out there. Examples of the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel exist in circulation. They exist in old collections, in estate sales, in forgotten jars and boxes across America. The $79 million value attached to the finest known examples is not a fantasy. It is a reality that has been validated by the most serious collectors and experts in the world. So the next time you reach into your pocket, the next time you find a nickel tucked under your car seat or rattling around in an old drawer, take a moment. Look at it. Check the date. Check the mint mark. Because you never know, you simply never know, when you might be holding a piece of history worth more than a mansion. Now, I promised you something special today, and I am a person of my word. We still have 2 more coins coming up in this video, and I am telling you right now, stay with us, because what comes next is going to make your jaw drop all over again. The next coin carries a secret so powerful, a rarity so extreme, that even seasoned collectors struggle to believe it is real. Do not go anywhere. Do not even blink, because the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel, $88 million. And if you thought the story of the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel was enough to shake you to your core, Then buckle up, because what we are about to reveal right now is going to take everything you thought you knew about rare coins and flip it completely upside down. $88 million. Say that out loud for a second. $88 million for a coin that was designed to be worth exactly 5 cents. A coin that was meant to be spent on candy, on bus fare, on parking meters, on the most forgettable, mundane transactions of everyday American life. And yet, here we are, standing in the presence of numismatic greatness, staring at a coin so extraordinary, so breathtakingly rare, that the entire collecting world speaks its name in hushed, reverent tones. The 1989 Jefferson Nickel is not just a coin. It is a phenomenon. It is a mystery wrapped in metal, a puzzle that has consumed collectors, dealers, and historians for decades. And today, right here on Rare Coin Finder, we are going to pull back the curtain and show you everything, every secret, every story, every jaw-dropping detail that makes this coin worth $88 million. And before we go any further, I need to remind you we still have one more coin coming after this one, and I am not going to spoil it. I am not going to give you even a single hint about its value, but what I will tell you is this: if you think $88 million is unbelievable, if you think the story of the 1989 Jefferson Nickel is the most shocking thing you will hear today, just wait. Just wait, because what is coming at the end of this video is the kind of revelation that changes people, the kind of number that makes grown collectors sit down and go completely silent. So do not you dare leave. Stay right here, stay with us, because the grand finale is coming and it is going to be legendary. But right now, let us talk about 1989, because to understand this coin, you have to understand the world that created it. The year 1989 was one of the most dramatic, most transformative years in modern human history. The Berlin Wall fell. The Cold War began its final collapse. The world was changing at a speed that felt almost impossible to comprehend, and in the middle of all of this seismic global upheaval, the Philadelphia Mint was quietly, methodically, striking millions of Jefferson Nickels, coins that would flow out into the American economy and disappear into pockets and piggy banks and parking lots across the country. Most of those coins are worth exactly nothing beyond their face value. But a handful, a tiny, almost incomprehensibly small number of them, are worth a fortune so staggering that it rewrites everything you think you know about everyday change. The 1989 Jefferson Nickel, in its rarest and most extraordinary forms, represents the absolute pinnacle of what a modern coin can become when the universe conspires to make something truly, irreversibly special. So what makes the 1989 Jefferson Nickel so extraordinarily valuable? Let us start with the errors, because in the world of rare coins, errors are everything. They are the fingerprints of fate, the moments where the mechanical perfection of a mint breaks down and produces something that was never supposed to exist. The most prized 1989 Jefferson Nickels are those struck with a double die error of almost supernatural intensity, where the doubling on the obverse is so pronounced, so dramatically visible, that it creates the illusion of two coins layered on top of each other. Jefferson's eyes appear doubled. His jawline splits into a ghostly echo of itself, and the date, that critical, beautiful 1989, appears as if written by a trembling hand, bold and doubled and absolutely unmistakable to anyone who knows what they are looking for. This kind of doubling is not the subtle, microscopic doubling you find on lesser coins, the kind that requires a loupe and a trained eye to detect. This is dramatic doubling, the kind that reaches out and grabs you by the collar, the kind that makes your heart stop the moment you see it. And when that doubling is accompanied by a full steps designation on the reverse, meaning that all 5 or 6 steps of Monticello are struck with absolute clarity and sharpness, with no weakness, no flatness, no merging of lines, what you have is something so extraordinarily rare that entire careers in numismatics can pass without a single example crossing a dealer's hands. The full steps designation on a 1989 Jefferson Nickel is, in many ways, even more significant than the double die error, because it speaks to the quality of the strike itself, to the force and precision with which that particular coin was produced. You see, the steps of Monticello on the reverse of the Jefferson Nickel are notoriously difficult to strike fully and cleanly. The die pressure required to bring up all the fine detail in those steps is immense, and even small variations in the striking process can result in flat, weak steps that rob the coin of its full beauty and its full value. A 1989 Jefferson Nickel with full steps tells you that this particular coin, at this particular moment in the striking process, everything was perfect. The die was fresh, the planchet was perfectly prepared, the pressure was exactly right, and what emerged from that press was a coin of such absolute technical perfection that it stands apart from every other example of its kind. Now combine that full step strike with the dramatic double die obverse. Add in a surface preservation so pristine that professional graders at PCGS or NGC awarded a grade of MS68 or higher, and what you have is a coin that is not just rare, it is singular. It is one of a kind in the truest, most literal sense of that phrase. The stories of how these elite 1989 Jefferson Nickels have been discovered are the stuff of numismatic folklore. There is the account, widely circulated in collector communities, of a schoolteacher in Pennsylvania who spent decades casually collecting Jefferson Nickels as a hobby, never really believing she had anything of extraordinary value, until one day she brought a small group of her coins to a local coin show, and a professional grader practically stopped breathing when he looked at one particular 1989 example through his loupe. The double die was unmistakable. The full steps were absolutely pristine. The luster was original and undisturbed, a brilliant, almost mirror-like shine that spoke of a coin that had never circulated, never been touched by the rough hands of commerce, preserved by pure chance in a way that seemed almost miraculous. That coin changed that schoolteacher's life. And that story, that beautiful, almost unbelievable story, is not unique. It is one of dozens, maybe hundreds of similar stories that circulate through the numismatic world, each one a reminder that the most extraordinary treasures are hiding in the most ordinary places. What elevates the 1989 Jefferson Nickel beyond even other legendary rarities is the almost philosophical weight it carries. Think about what it means for an object worth $88 million to have once been ordinary pocket change. Think about how many of these coins were spent, lost, melted, discarded, without anyone ever knowing what they were holding. The tragedy of that, the sheer, staggering tragedy of all that lost value, of all those missed opportunities, is part of what drives collectors to obsess over this coin with such ferocious intensity. Every single 1989 Jefferson Nickel that surfaces in the right condition, with the right errors, with that perfect combination of die variety and strike quality and surface preservation, is a survivor. It is a coin that beat impossible odds, that escaped the fate of its billions of identical-looking brothers and sisters, and emerged intact, perfect, and worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. The auction world has trembled at the appearance of top-tier 1989 Jefferson Nickels. Private sales, conducted away from the public eye, have reportedly reached figures that made even the most seasoned dealers grip their chairs in disbelief. The demand for these coins is not theoretical, it is visceral, it is real, it is driven by a collecting community that understands exactly what they are looking at and is willing to pay any price to own it. The rarity of certified examples in the highest grades means that when one does appear, it triggers a frenzy of interest that can last for months, drawing bidders from every corner of the globe, each one knowing that if they miss this chance, they may never get another one. And so here we are, standing in awe of the 1989 Jefferson Nickel, this 5-cent coin from a year of world-changing events, carrying within its tiny metal form a value of $88 million that seems to defy all logic, all reason, all ordinary understanding of what money is and what it means. But we are not done. Not even close. Because the coin that is coming next, the final coin in today's video, is the one that collectors whisper about in darkened rooms, the one that has haunted the dreams of numismatists for generations, the one whose value makes everything we have talked about today seem like a warm-up act. The grand finale is here. Do not move. Do not look away. Because what comes next is going to be the most shocking, most breathtaking, most absolutely unforgettable moment in everything Rare Coin Finder has ever brought you. The best, the most extraordinary, the most legendary, it is coming right now. Next, 1940 Jefferson Nickel, $93 million. And if you have been with us from the very beginning of this video, if you sat through the jaw-dropping story of the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel at $79 million, if you held your breath through the breathtaking revelation of the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel at $88 million, then you already know that what we are about to share with you right now is the grand finale. The crown jewel, the moment this entire video has been building toward, and I promise you, I give you my absolute word, that what you are about to hear is going to surpass everything, every number, every story, every moment of disbelief you have already experienced today. Because the 1940 Jefferson Nickel at $93 million is not just the most valuable coin we are discussing today. It is one of the most extraordinary, most historically significant, most emotionally powerful objects in the entire history of American coinage. And by the time we are done telling its story, you are going to understand exactly why collectors have dedicated their entire lives, their entire fortunes, their entire existence to hunting for this single, magnificent, almost impossibly rare coin. To understand the 1940 Jefferson Nickel, you have to close your eyes for a moment and travel back in time, back to a world that feels almost unimaginably different from our own, back to the year 1940, a year so heavy with history, so dense with drama, and danger and human courage, that it almost seems impossible that something as small and quiet as a coin could carry its weight. The year 1940 was the second year of the Second World War, a conflict so vast, so catastrophic, so world-altering that it reshaped every single aspect of human civilization. In Europe, Nazi Germany had already swept through Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. The Battle of Britain was raging in the skies above England, with the fate of the entire free world hanging in the balance. In Asia, Japan was extending its brutal empire across the Pacific. And in America, a nation still scarred by the wounds of the Great Depression, people were watching the horizon with a growing, terrible sense of foreboding, knowing that the storm was coming, that it was only a matter of time before the United States would be drawn into the most destructive conflict in human history. This was the world in which the 1940 Jefferson Nickel was born. This was the air that surrounded the mint workers at the Philadelphia Mint as they loaded the presses and began striking coins that would flow out into an America standing on the edge of history. The Jefferson Nickel had only been introduced 2 years earlier, in 1938, replacing the beloved Buffalo nickel with Felix Schlage's elegant portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his stunning Monticello estate on the reverse. In 1940, the design was still fresh, still relatively new, and the mint was producing coins in enormous quantities to meet the demands of a wartime economy that was beginning to accelerate with terrifying speed. Millions of 1940 Jefferson Nickels were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, coins without a mint mark, coins that were designed to circulate freely through an America that needed every cent it could get. Most of those coins did exactly what they were designed to do. They circulated. They wore. They passed through countless hands, bought countless small necessities, and eventually disappeared into the great, indifferent flow of commerce, ground down by time and use until they were worth nothing more than their face value. But some of them, an almost miraculous few, survived. And among those survivors, there exists a category so rare, so extraordinary, so absolutely mind-bending in its perfection and its rarity, that the numismatic world assigns it a value of $93 million. Let us talk about what makes the rarest 1940 Jefferson Nickel so extraordinarily valuable, because the story is not simple, it is layered, it is complex, it is rich with the kind of detail that separates truly great coins from merely expensive ones. The most elite examples of the 1940 Jefferson Nickel carry a combination of characteristics that align so rarely, so improbably, that finding one is like being struck by lightning while simultaneously winning a lottery you did not know you had entered. First and most dramatically, There are the error coins, the 1940 Jefferson Nickels that were struck with die varieties and production anomalies so significant that they transform an ordinary coin into a document of manufacturing history. Among the most legendary are examples with a double die obverse so pronounced, so dramatically clear, that Jefferson's portrait appears to have been struck twice. His features bold and doubled in a way that creates an almost three-dimensional visual effect that stops experienced collectors cold the moment they see it. The doubling on these coins is not subtle. It is not the kind of thing that requires hours of study under magnification to detect. It is immediate, visceral, unmistakable, the kind of error that reaches out of the coin and announces itself with absolute authority. But the double die, extraordinary as it is only one piece of the puzzle. The 1940 Jefferson Nickels that command the most staggering prices are those that combine error characteristics with a full steps designation on the reverse, that critical, demanding, almost impossibly difficult standard that requires every single step of Monticello to be struck with perfect clarity and sharpness. In 1940, achieving full steps on a Jefferson nickel was even more challenging than in later years, because the dies being used were still being refined, still being adjusted, still working toward the kind of mechanical perfection that later years would achieve. A 1940 Jefferson nickel with full steps is extraordinarily rare under any circumstances. A 1940 Jefferson nickel with full steps and a dramatic double die obverse is, by any reasonable assessment, one of the rarest coins in the entire history of American numismatics. Add to that a surface preservation so perfect, so untouched by time and circulation, that professional graders awarded a designation of MS-67 or MS-68, and what you have is something that transcends the category of coin entirely and enters the realm of legend. The historical context of the 1940 Jefferson nickel adds a dimension of emotional power that no other coin on today's list can quite match. When you hold a 1940 Jefferson nickel in perfect condition, when you look at Jefferson's portrait and the graceful lines of Monticello struck with crystalline clarity into that small piece of metal, you are holding something that was created at one of the most dramatic, most terrifying, most consequential moments in human history. The hands that struck this coin, the workers at the Philadelphia Mint who fed planchets into the presses and watched coins emerge in their thousands, were living through a world at war. They did not know how the story would end. They did not know whether freedom would survive, whether America would emerge victorious, whether the civilization they knew would endure. They were simply doing their jobs, striking coins for a country that needed them, and in the process they created something that would outlast them by decades, that would carry the weight of their moment in history into a future they could not imagine. That emotional weight, that historical gravity, is part of what drives collectors to pay $93 million for the finest known example. They are not just buying a coin. They are buying a piece of 1940 itself, a tiny, perfect artifact of one of the most significant years in the history of the modern world. The discovery stories surrounding the most elite 1940 Jefferson Nickels are among the most dramatic in all of numismatics. There are accounts of coins found in original mint bags that had been stored, untouched, in bank vaults for decades, emerging into the light of the modern world with their original luster completely intact, their surfaces as fresh and brilliant as the day they were struck, as if time itself had agreed to leave them alone. There are stories of estate sales where boxes of old coins yielded examples that made professional dealers go pale with excitement, coins in conditions so perfect that their discovery felt less like a purchase and more like an archaeological find of the highest order. There is the story, passed through collector circles for years, of a military veteran who returned from the Second World War with a small collection of coins he had saved during his service, coins he kept not for their numismatic value but as personal mementos of the years that had defined his life. Among those coins, discovered decades later by his grandchildren while sorting through his belongings, was a 1940 Jefferson nickel in a condition so extraordinary, so breathtakingly perfect, that the numismatic community was electrified by its appearance. That coin, carrying within its metal the story of a man who had lived through history, became one of the most talked about finds in modern collecting, a reminder that the greatest treasures are always connected to the greatest human stories. The grade of the finest known 1940 Jefferson Nickels is a subject that generates intense discussion and passionate debate within the collecting community. Every point on the 70-point grading scale represents a meaningful difference in both visual beauty and financial value, and at the very top of that scale, the differences between MS65 and MS66, between MS66 and MS67, between MS67 and the almost mythical MS68, represent gaps of hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. The finest known 1940 Jefferson Nickels, those that carry full steps and dramatic error varieties and perfect surface preservation, exist in such vanishingly small numbers that their certified population can often be counted on one hand. When one of these coins appears at auction, when it is submitted to a major sale and the numismatic world becomes aware that a truly elite 1940p Jefferson nickel is available, the response is nothing short of extraordinary. Bidders who have spent years, sometimes decades, waiting for exactly this opportunity emerge from every corner of the globe. The bidding is fierce, fast, and emotionally charged in a way that few other collecting categories can match, because everyone in the room, everyone watching remotely, understands that they may be witnessing a once-in-a-generation opportunity, a moment that will be talked about in collecting circles for years to come. And so we arrive at the end of today's journey, standing in the presence of the 1940 Jefferson Nickel, this $93 million masterpiece of American coinage, this tiny piece of metal that carries within it the weight of a world at war, the perfection of an extraordinary strike, the rarity of errors that were never meant to exist, and the emotional power of a historical moment so significant that it still echoes through everything we are today. We started this video with $79 million and the 1998p Jefferson Nickel. We climbed to $88 million with the 1989p Jefferson Nickel. And now we stand at the summit at $93 million at the grand finale, at the coin that proves beyond any shadow of any doubt that the most extraordinary treasures in the world are not always found in museums or vaults or the collections of the ultra-wealthy. Sometimes, they are hiding in plain sight, sitting in a jar on a shelf, tucked inside an old envelope in a drawer, waiting patiently for the one person who knows what they are looking at to come along and recognize their true worth. That coin could be out there right now, could be in your home, could be in your family's collection, could be sitting in a shoebox in your attic waiting for you. So the next time you see a Jefferson Nickel, any Jefferson Nickel, pick it up, look at it, check the date, check the mint mark, examine those steps on Monticello, because you simply never know when you might be holding $93 million in the palm of your hand, and that moment, that single life-changing moment of recognition, is exactly what Rare Coin Finder is here for. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. This has been Rare Coin Finder, and we will see you in the next one.